UnleashIndependence.com.
I will not sit by and watch my country die or be killed or murdered from a bunch of vapid politicians in Washington, D.C. who think that their careers and agendas and selfish politics is more important than American ideals and freedom. We have to list the untouchables. We have to come up with something that when every generation of future idiots and politicians look at it, they'll be able to say, we can't violate these principles.
And they came up with 183. The states dwindled them down to 10. 10 basic fundamental principles that could never be touched or encroached upon by government. We have gone full circle and ignored all of that and right back where we were because they just are flexible. There's no supremacy. There's nothing expressed about it. Congress has developed all these bureaucracies who now come up with policies and regulations that supersede the Constitution, that supersede the Bill of Rights. The politicians of today have to tell you it's a breathing and flexible document. Why do they have to tell you that? Because they're violating it every day. They have to get you to believe that what they're doing is okay instead of against the law. Because this case was the most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of our country and the only time in American history where sheriffs told the federal government you went too far and we'll take you to court and we'll prove it. And this is what Justice Antonin Scalia said in this 5-4 split decision. Residual state sovereignty was also implicit, of course, in the Constitution's conferral upon Congress of not all governmental powers. Well, lo and behold, somebody's saying that Congress doesn't have all governmental powers. Oh, yes, they do. If you let them have them, they will continue to take them. That the rules of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, my friends, were rendered express by the ultimate check and balance in the Bill of Rights, the supreme untouchables, the ultimate check and balance known as state sovereignty, states' rights, and local autonomy. Who in your county and who in your state is going to enforce state sovereignty?
All right. Today's broadcast, we have Sheriff Mack. We want to welcome him on. It's a very special broadcast, so thank you for coming on, Sheriff Mack.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, perfect. And then, of course, we have our co-founder, Brock. Thanks, Brock, for putting this together and coming on.
Yep, awesome. Excited to be here. Excited to pick Richard's brain.
And then also on the line we have Kenny Barlow. Kenny, just a brief introduction.
Okay, well, my name's Kenny Barlow. I'm the sales manager for North American Arms out of Provo, Utah. We make, this is my day job, we make five-shot 22 caliber mini revolvers for personal defense that basically are about $200. Our argument is it's not your battle-ready 1911 that you're going to take, but it's considerably a lot better than having nothing at all. It's one of those guns where you put it in your pocket so you can get the hell through a parking lot late at night kind of a gun. And on the side, I run the Utah Gun Exchange website out of Utah. It's an online classifieds gun market.
Perfect. All right. Well, so Sheriff Richard Mack, if there's somebody out there that's listening that has not heard your name and is not familiar with you, could you give a little bit of a bio and kind of what you've done so far?
Well, coincidentally, I started my police career right there in Provo, Utah. I graduated from BYU, and then I tried to get in the FBI, and while I was waiting to hear from the FBI, I hired on full-time with the Provo Police Department, and I decided to stay there, and I worked there for 11 and a half years, did just about everything in law enforcement imaginable, investigated everything. I started as a meter maid while I was working my way through college, and investigated everything from bicycle theft to murder, and was a patrol sergeant, front desk sergeant, corporal, detective, undercover narcotics agent, and like I said, I just about did it all. And then in 1988, I moved to Arizona and ran for Graham County Sheriff. That's my hometown. And I was elected, and then I was reelected in 1992. And then in 1994, I was the first sheriff in American history to file a lawsuit against the federal government to stop gun control. And I sued over the Brady Bill and won a case at the United States Supreme Court against the incursions and overreach of the federal government. They had decided that they would force us, literally commandeer the office of sheriff for federal bidding, and I refused to participate. I sued them. 6 other sheriffs joined the lawsuit, and Sheriff Prince from Montana and I ended up at the Supreme Court together in December of 1996, and on June 27, 1997, the Supreme Court agreed with us, saying that the federal government did not have any authority to tell us what to do, and that states are not subject to federal direction. And they're not our boss. The federal government is not supreme. The Supremacy Clause does not grant carte blanche to the federal government, as many of our pundits and politicians and many misdirected people try to say today. It's not true. The federal government is not our boss. They're not dictators. They're not the American dictator. And then since that time, I lost my third race, and since that time, since 98, I've been writing books and been on the lecture circuit. And 4 years ago, right this very month, I released a book called The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. And that book has gone viral all across the country. It's gone to every sheriff, and it gave birth to an organization that I started called the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officer Association. And we now have on our website about 240 sheriffs who have said that they will stand against what Barack Obama is trying to do in implementing more gun control in this country. And so we're really proud of this movement. We're really proud of the sheriffs that have the courage to stand. And we have said this all along, that if America is to be turned around and if we are to save America, we must do it one county at a time. Sheriff by sheriff and state by state is how we take back America, and we stop the tyranny of Washington, D.C. And that's why that right now is very involved in that movement. And I will tell all of you, we're in the middle of a big fundraiser for this very organization, and we're reaching out to the American people to become a part of this great movement at CSPOA.org. Again, it stands for Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officer Association, CSPOA.org.
And actually, so that clip that we played earlier, right when we got you on, I did play it earlier in the show, so that's kind of why I cut it short. But that was something produced from your group, your organization that you created. So, well, I just want to say, personally, thank you for what you've done and how you've orchestrated and organized people to come together. I just want to bring this up. I think most of our listeners, and anyone who's going to listen to this, is on the same page. But if there is somebody on the fence, could you say, give a reason why we should be protecting our guns? Is there not a threat with, the criminal element, and isn't it for our safety?
Well, you bring up a lot of good points, but the ideal that we're talking about here is what the Founding Fathers put in the Constitution to begin with, and I guess that's a little bit of a mistake because they didn't put the Second Amendment in there to begin with. And a couple of years later, after they formed the Constitution, they said the Constitution didn't go far enough, and they wanted a specific declaration of rights that could never be violated. And like I said, the untouchables, they wanted to be very clear to every politician throughout the American future that you could not make a mistake, that you could not lie to the people and say, no, these things are supposed to happen. We're supposed to do this to you. And so they made up a list of rights that King George III or any similar tyrant could never violate again. And lo and behold, they came up with like 185 of them, and then the states dwindled them down to 10, and they became known as the Bill of Rights, which is also what I nicknamed the Untouchables. And the Second Amendment is exactly that, and that is that this is what government cannot touch. And so if government can't touch these, then why do we have some 20,000 gun control laws in this country? And I'll tell you right now, the only thing, I don't hunt, and I'm not really a big gun fanatic. I own a few guns, but I'll tell you what, I am a freedom fanatic, and that is exactly what guns represent. No free man has ever been disallowed guns. Now they're trying to make us look like we're subjects to the government. If you give up your guns, you're giving up your freedom. And that's just a plain and simple fact, and it is. Never trust government with taking over gun ownership. And that's what we're seeing today. And we're seeing a lot of Americans, like 80 million gun owners, who do not trust this administration, who do not trust Barack Obama and his proposals with Joe Biden. And that's why you can't even hardly get guns or ammo now, because they are not trusted. People are buying these things up because they will not give up their freedom and their liberty. And that which is guaranteed in the Constitution cannot be regulated by the government.
No, absolutely. And I just want to make it clear that, myself, Brock, Kenny, we all are on the same side as that. Whether we're talking about hunting, self-defense, or strictly, some of the reasons that the Founding Fathers gave for the Second Amendment to stave off tyranny, we all support the Second Amendment. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that. It's really interesting that MSNBC, I think last week, they used this phrase and it stuck with me. They called it tyranny hypothesis or tyranny hypotheses. The thing about there's always this question of why do you need an AR-15? Why do you need this? Why does anybody need a 30-round magazine?
Right.
And it's interesting. My personal opinion is it's nobody's business to tell me what I need. First of all.
Well, you're exactly. That's exactly what I said. I said my first knee-jerk reaction to that question is it's none of your damn business.
Absolutely. But then on top of that, it goes a little further. And when people ask that question, in my opinion, they don't buy into the idea of tyranny being a real thing. They think, oh, well, we've moved beyond that. We're a civilized society. And all I have to do is remind people that in my father's lifetime, we interned 120,000 Japanese people just because they were Japanese. We stripped George Takei, Mr. Sulu from Star Trek. We stripped his rights as a child and put him in a camp for 4 years because of the nature of his ancestry. He was an American citizen through and through. So I don't, if we can't see that far back, then I really, it's hard to have hope for people in the future to see that these tyrannical things happened.
Well, and they still are. We now have federal bureaucracies putting people in jail because they don't have permits to deal in raw milk.
Right.
Literally, we have Amish farmers facing jail sentences because they don't pasteurize their milk. And these products are so much more healthier than the store-bought milk. And so I've been involved with that. But it just goes on, and we continue to exercise this dictatorial tyranny over the people in this country and at the same time exclaim, well, it's for your own good. And this is not for our own good, and none of us should be trusting the government. And it's obvious that the American people don't trust this government anymore, and that's why we're in the mess we're in today. And that's why we have, if you look at our website, we have over 240 sheriffs now who have stood for freedom and said, this is my line in the sand. This is all I'm taking, and I'm not taking any more. And the federal government is not going to come in here and victimize our people. And the theory and doctrine of interposition is exactly what we've been preaching at the CSPOA for the last 4.5 years, and it's working. And we're now seeing sheriffs who have said, "We're not going to do that. You're not going to do that in my county. Not as long as I'm sheriff. You might want the people might choose somebody else later on, but now, while I'm sheriff, I will keep my word. I will keep my oath of office, and I will protect my people from the tyranny of Washington D.C." And if we get 600, 700, 800 sheriffs doing this, there's going to be no stopping it. We will win. There's about 3,100 sheriffs in America, and we've now got almost 10%, and we're just going to make this continue to grow, and that's why we need everybody involved with us on this. And Ken, we'd love to have you as one of our sponsors on our website if you'd like to consider talking to me about that later.
Yeah, either one of us, I think, would be interested in that. I do want to jump in and talk about something. I do think that a lot of Americans, with what has been happening, say with Aurora, the shooting, and with Sandy Hook, do feel that there should be a discussion. And personally, I'm not going to speak for everyone on this program, but personally, I do think that there should be a discussion about what is causing this. I don't.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't think it's weapons, but in order to have a discussion, I think that we need to have a true definition of terms. And I want to get your opinion on this, but what I'm understanding and what my research has produced is that two things. The first one is we're using the terms assault weapons and assault rifles, and that's completely an embellishment. That's not accurate at all to the true case or what would be considered a selective fire or fully automatic rifle, where in 1934, with the National Guns Act, I believe is what it was, or National Firearms Act, I'm sorry, they talked about gangster weapons being, fully automatic weapons and assault rifles, things like that. Secondly, and I think even people within the movement of liberty or just proponents of freedom, they get caught in this as well, and they talk about constitutional rights. And I don't think that that's a true definition of what rights are, because the Constitution, though it enumerated and specified some of our rights, there's no such thing as a constitutional right. Our rights do not come from the Constitution. They come from our God. And that's my understanding, but I want to get your opinion, because how can we have a discussion when we're not using true definitions?
Well, we're not, and they are very good at changing that, and their propaganda schemes are very effective, and especially over the masses who have never been educated properly. We don't teach the Constitution in schools. We don't teach the principles of freedom in our schools. You won't find one government book in this country in government, especially in high school or any other grade level, that discusses why the Second Amendment was put into the Constitution, what the Founding Fathers felt about gun ownership. You won't see that anywhere. And I since I left the sheriff's office, I taught government for a semester, and that's where I saw it, because the curriculum that the National Education Association puts out is anything but correct or patriotic or American. And so we are literally raising a generation of ignorance, and the students never learn these things, so they don't have any basis for deciding to stay on the right side or not. And so they're easily led away with these terms of assault rifles and the Constitution is antiquated, and we don't teach these principles, as you alluded to, that the Constitution was there not to grant anything. It didn't give anything. It simply was to protect what we already were born with as the Declaration of Independence state. And now it's even against the law to teach the Declaration of Independence, because you can't talk about the Creator and Creator-endowed rights. And so our schools have kicked all those principles out, and so kids are just kind of wandering around in the fields of ignorance trying to figure things out, and they've never been taught properly. And so it's easy to be misled by the propaganda of politicians. And so you're absolutely correct. The assault rifle terminology, and I don't even know where the assault rifle term came from. Some people said it's an actual term used in military, but I've never been in the military, so I don't know. But it certainly isn't applied correctly today. It's just a way to make people think that, like I said, the only purpose for owning one of those high-capacity rifles with a high-capacity magazine is to kill people. Well, I know hundreds of people who own those and never shot anybody and never hurt anybody. So I guess they'd have to be wrong there, because I've shot assault rifles or I've shot high-capacity guns before, machine guns or semi-autos, and I've never killed anybody. And I find them very exhilarating. They're extremely fun. And none of my family, none of my friends have ever shot anybody. The 20 years I spent in law enforcement, I never shot anybody. And so really their statistics and the things that they put out are absolute lies, and it's just a way of garnering more public support to get guns off the streets and to create more gun control. And the federal government, let's just be real clear here. While we have this discussion, the first discussion in crime and crime analysis is plain and simply this: gun control in America is against the law. Now, you want to have the discussion about why we have mass shootings? Let's go for it. Let's talk about inner city violence. Let's talk about the repeat offender problems and letting people out before they're even halfway done with their sentence. Let's talk about liberal sentences from judges and the lack of capital punishment. And let's talk about how we mama coddle criminals and let them back out on the streets. And let's talk about how we don't really go after gangs and gang shootings in this country. I'm all for talking about that. But when they start blaming the instrument instead of going after the criminal, that's when you're going to end up with these types of situations, and they end up doing nothing but trying to appease the public with symbolic legislation that means nothing. And none of this proposed legislation in Washington from Barack Obama, none of that will have an impact on crime or these types of shootings or to stop the murder rate in this country. That's all a farce.
Right. I mean, as far as helping anything, I mean, it could be maybe affected in the negative. But I do have a caller. This is Joshua. He called in. He wanted to ask you a quick question. Josh, you're welcome to talk now.
Hi, I'm Joshua. It's nice to meet you, Sheriff Mack. My question for you is, you talked about how the education in America is largely responsible for people adopting the gun control because they're not getting taught the right values. And so my question to you is, how do you see that being solved? Homeschool movement or something else?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I love homeschoolers. And let me tell you a quick little anecdote. I was teaching a class a political science class about 4 or 5 years ago at Brigham Young University. And there's about 250 students in there, and I asked any of them if they knew what the purpose of our Constitution was. And nobody knew. I'm talking 250 kids. Nobody knew. And then finally this little girl kind of shyly raised her hand, and she described exactly. She said the Constitution was written specifically to limit what government could do to us in order to protect the God-given rights that we were all born with. And I said, wow. I said, that's amazing. I said, let me guess. You were homeschooled. And she says, yes, I was. And the only person that knew the answer was the only homeschooler in the classroom. And I totally believe in homeschooling and charter schools. There's a great school right outside Provo, I believe in American Fork, called the American Heritage. That's a school that focuses on the religious foundation of America and the constitutional precepts that our country was founded upon, and they teach all of that. And so the charter schools that really get into the Constitution and get into the Founding Fathers and the intent of the Founders, and homeschools that really get into the Constitution and American ideals, that's where we learn that. And I'm glad we now have that competition for the monopoly government schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me chime in too. Being a part of Utah, there's another a private school that their emphasis is on the founding documents and on self-ownership, the principles of liberty, which are self-ownership. Challenger School, they're in several states too. But yeah, they're starting to pop up. I mean, Challenger School's been around for a little while. I'm not sure about the heritage. Do you know how long they've been around?
Oh, it's been around quite a while.
Okay.
I'd say about 15, 20 years at least.
Okay, great. Brock, can I have a question or someone?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah,
I just wanted to add to what Sheriff Mack was saying about the education thing and what you were talking about specifically about defining your terms. I think that's absolutely correct, in so much that the words that people use when they associate when they try to talk about gun control measures and things like that, they're very they're emotional words. They're tactical words. They're politically tactical for a reason. They're meant to invoke emotion. The word assault weapon should strike fear into your heart over rifle, over semi-automatic rifle. That's a very technical, clinical term. When you say assault weapon, it's very much a word to be feared of. The same goes for the phrase gun show loophole. Because I run a classified site, a private sale classified site. People like to call private sales the gun show loophole. They want people to think that you go to a gun show and just people are conducting transactions without background checks and this, that, and the other. Loophole. It's a very tactical phrase. Loophole is, everybody hates a loophole. Loopholes are cheater. You're a cheater if you take advantage of a loophole. And so it's designed to take you into an emotional direction, say, well, we can't stand for that, as opposed to actually getting back to these core basics in education and logic and reason, and sitting there and thinking these things through and actually, defining our terms correctly. And I think the sheriff is absolutely correct that it's a problem with our educational system that it doesn't teach these values, and it doesn't teach us to be logical and rational. It teaches us to be emotional beings.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to add one part of that. Yes, I think the gun show loophole thing really has gone way too far, and this whole background check thing. First of all, we have to go back to the principle and examine the Second Amendment and what its intent was, and did it allow for the government to regulate the right to keep and bear arms? I can see nothing from the Founding Fathers or their discussion about the Second Amendment. There was complete unanimity among the Founding Fathers on the Second Amendment. There were arguments among the Founding Fathers on lots of issues, and the Constitution almost didn't make it because of that. And that resulted in the Great Compromise, which gave us the bicameral Congress, the Senate and House of Representatives. That was the biggest compromise of all. And there was lots of arguments, and the Founding Fathers didn't get along on some of this, and some of them absolutely hated each other on some of this as a result. But the Second Amendment, there was no argument. There was very little discussion. They put it in there as strong as they could. The militia was the people, and that was exemplified by the ride of Paul Revere. So there's no contradiction within the Second Amendment. The Founding Fathers knew what they were talking about. They did not try to guarantee rights to soldiers to keep and bear arms, which would have been redundant and ridiculous and was not the issue. The militia were the citizen volunteers, and when you see that, you'll understand the entire Second Amendment. There's only 27 words in there. It's pretty simple and forthright. I don't need to have that interpreted for me. I know what it means. I know what it says. There's never a place in the Bill of Rights where it says government has the right to regulate these freedoms. In fact, these were warnings to government what you can't do. And so even people, when they talk about the gun show loophole, that everybody should have a background check, I don't believe in background checks at all. And I'll be the first one to voluntarily take a background check. But once you allow government to say, you can't have a gun, you cannot exercise your rights guaranteed in the Second Amendment, you cannot exercise your Second Amendment rights until you ask us permission, or until we background check you and specifically allow you to have a gun. So allowing government that authority that they do not constitutionally have, I find, again, part of this propaganda scheme. They say, oh, don't you believe in background checks? Don't you believe people should have background checks? It might be a good idea. But in my Supreme Court case, Scalia answered all of these questions, and he said, quote, the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions, end quote. So this thing about good ideas and good intentions do not equate to constitutionality. And I'm telling you, that's right where background checks lie. It might be a good idea, but the government has no authority to force those on us, and they have absolutely no authority to tell us that we must submit to that before we are allowed our Second Amendment freedoms. Those are guaranteed. I had those before the Second Amendment was founded. I had those before the Founding Fathers became an entity or a group, and I do not ask permission from government to exercise my rights. And I think a lot of us, even in the gun rights movement, have fallen prey a little bit to that one. But I will never support the government saying we have the right to force you to have a background check.
In Utah, there's a bill. It's HB 76, and before we brought you on, Kenny and I were talking about it a little bit. This actually, in the city of Utah, revoked. It's the constitutional carry amendment, or law, and what it does is it removes permission that you need to seek if you want to conceal carry. If you have a gun,
yeah, we have that in there. That's exactly what we have in Arizona. We have 4 states that have constitutional carry. If you don't have constitutional carry, then you have unconstitutional carry. And Texas, where I'm living right now, has unconstitutional carry, where people still have to ask permission how to carry a gun. No, and I hope that passes there in Utah. It should have already.
Yeah, we're working hard here to get it through.
Sorry to cut you off, but Kenny's got to go. He's actually at a gun show right now, but he's also from Utah Gun Exchange. I just wanted to say there was a local company who used to sell guns online, or people could post guns, and they refused to do that after the shootings, and Kenny and some other business partners put up Utah Gun Exchange, so people were actually able to sell guns, and people could actually buy them still. So, Kenny, if you want to just pretty much say goodbye.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys having me on the phone. I'm here in the middle of a trade show here, just selling products and looking at guns. But yeah, UtahGunExchange.com, the leading classified provider. Bowed to some pressure. I'm not going to judge them. We appreciate what they did for us in the past, but Utah Gun Exchange, we got this going forward. It's the state's largest online gun classified site right now, and I just appreciate you guys' time, and I appreciate being on the phone with Sheriff Mack. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on, Kenny. Thank you so much. All right, so right now in the state of Minnesota, I was notified of this yesterday. We actually sent off an email to maybe 24 legislators and representatives. They have a bill coming through, just their state, and this is what I want to make people really aware of and pay attention. We're so focused, I think, right now on the federal level of what may be going on, but Barack Obama is coming to support gun regulations. Not even regulations, gun, unregulations, taking them away in the state of Minnesota. And HF 241 actually would ban there's a gamut of weapons that would be taken out, but even such things as like a .22 rifle. And there's no grandfather clause. You have 3 options. Give it to the police and they'll destroy it. Destroy it yourself or get out of the state. And I wanted to see, there's only one sheriff, because I know that's what you do, you work with the sheriffs. There's one sheriff, his name is Robin Cole of Pine County, Minnesota, and he's the only one that said that he would not support or enforce this type of legislation. Can you speak to that? Are you working with people there?
Yes, I know that good sheriff, and I'm actually going to be speaking in Minnesota in March, and my speaking engagements have just really gone out the ceiling since all this has happened. But I think there's going to be more sheriffs in Minnesota taking a stronger stand. Certainly Utah set a tremendous example in sending out their letter to the federal government and others. There's probably, of all the state associations that wrote a letter, the Utah State Sheriff's Association was the most strongly worded. And only one sheriff refused to participate in that, and that's Sheriff Winder in Salt Lake County. And he doesn't know and understand the role of the sheriff, and he doesn't know and understand his oath of office. And I think it's still astonishing that we have public officials and sheriffs who swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution as required by Article 6 within the Constitution. The Founding Fathers developed this rule that if you're going to be working in government, you have to swear an allegiance to the Constitution, not to another facet of government, not to another bureaucrat, not to another elected official. We don't swear allegiance to the president. We don't swear allegiance to statutes or legislators. We swear it to the people, and that we promise when we take our job that we will protect your God-given rights. We will protect the Constitution. We will stand for what the Founding Fathers developed in the first place, what they fought and died for. They took an oath also. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's the same thing we're swearing to, and I wonder just where our sacred honor has gone to sometimes.
That's so true. That's some good points. Question I have for you, Sheriff, is if you're an individual listening and you're like, even for me, I don't want any of these laws restricting our gun control because I think the criminals have a leg up on us. But if an individual is listening, what should they be doing right now to secure our rights and increase our freedom?
Well, that's a good question, and we have the answer, and we're part of the solution. What I really want people to stress in your personal life now is become a part of the solution. And the sheriff movement is exactly that. They are exemplifying the solution. They're showing the way. They're showing tremendous leadership and courage in how we take back America. So first, I would suggest that you go to our website, CSPOA, Charlie, Sierra, Papa, Oscar, Adam, CSPOA.org, and look at the sheriffs that are involved. If your sheriff's on there, call him and tell him you're really proud of him. Thank him for his work. If he's not on the list, call your sheriff and ask him why he's not on the list. Ask him if he's received my book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. Each of you also need to read that book. You need to know what your sheriff is supposed to know. You need to know he works for you. This is the only law enforcement officer who is elected by, for, and of the people. He's not a bureaucrat. He doesn't answer to a bureaucrat. His only boss is the people of his county. And you have got to know and understand these principles we're talking about. And so I highly recommend that you get the book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. It's only 50 pages. It's extremely cheap. It's easy to read. You can get that. You can get like 3 of them for $20 or whatever. Get it and make sure that you know and understand these principles, and then get involved. Volunteer. The first thing that I said right now, check out our website, then call your sheriff. You must get involved with your sheriff. You must help him build these barriers against the encroachments of the federal government. That's actually in the book itself. That quote is in the book. It was from James Madison, that we must have states that build these barriers. Well, it isn't the state. The geography of Utah or any other state is not going to build the barriers. It's the people therein. And so become part of the posse. Tell the sheriff you want to be part of the posse. You want to volunteer to help. So that's what I recommend. That's where we're at. And if you get involved with this process, we're going to win. If you don't get involved, then it's going to probably just keep going the way it's been going. And we're all just going to start complaining and whining instead of getting involved and getting the game. Step up to the plate and be part of this solution. It's working now. We have proof that it's working. We had 2 conventions in 2012. We're going to have another one in September. And what we want to do right now is take this state by state. And we're going to start in Texas and just start going around the Midwest, and then go over to the West and take this to every sheriff association, to every sheriff, and say, look, we do have a Constitution. It still means what it says. We all swore to uphold and defend it. We owe it to our citizens. We owe it to America to take a stand against what the federal government is doing. We can make the federal government irrelevant. And I don't care what the issue is. I don't care if it's the IRS. I don't care if it's food freedom or gun control or Obamacare or whatever else they're trying to shove down our throats. I don't care if it's even too much spending in Washington. There is a way for the states and the counties to stop all of this and make this tyranny irrelevant in our lives, and we take back our families and we take back America, we take back our freedom, and it is incumbent on every single one of us to get involved in this process. We talk so much about all the problems, sometimes we forget about focusing on the solution. We have a solution here. Get involved with it. Again, go to CSPOA.org, see where your sheriff ranks, call your sheriff and say, hey, we want you on that list. We will back you all the way. If you're not going to get involved in this freedom, if you're not going to stand for freedom, then we're not going to support you either. If you're not going to support our freedom, we're not going to support your job.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Very, very wise words, very inspirational. Thank you again for coming on and spending so much time with us. I know you're a very busy man, so thanks for all the work that you've done.
Well, thank you, too, and everybody can become a member and, again, be part of this solution. And we finally have something that's working, so let's take advantage of that, get involved in it. Every single one of you have homework to do now. Get a hold of your sheriff, and remember, everything is there. All the tools and all the information is available there at CSPOA.org. And thanks so much for having me this beautiful day.
More than welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mack. We'll be posting all your information on our website, so anybody listening, you can go there, and it'll link you over just in case with this book and everything.
Thank you for having me, and I'll catch you next time.
All right. Take care. All right. That was Sheriff Mack. Man, that was great. I just want to we still have Joshua on the line. Got Brock. Just want to talk to you guys a little bit, and what are your thoughts? What do you have going on?
Yeah, I was rather encouraged that there's still guys out there like that. I mean, that's kind of gentlemen that you just don't see that often. That's the first time I'd ever heard Sheriff Mack speak. I heard the name floating around the internet before, but it's greatly encouraging, I think, to know that there are not only guys like that out there, but they're actually in positions of power and influence, in the role of a sheriff. And I definitely support what he's doing. And if he can encourage sheriffs across the country to protect us from the federal government, that's fantastic. So that's greatly encouraging to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think people like Sheriff, we need more people. Anybody listening, we need more people like Sheriff Mack. You don't have to have been a sheriff in the past or anything. The key, I think, to what's making Sheriff Mack successful is he's looking for solutions, like he said. He's constantly looking for solutions because, again, anybody, any Yahoo can just say, hey, there's a problem, or go to your garden and say, hey, there's some weeds. They're bad. And only the people who are fixing problems are the ones that are pulling out the weeds.
Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so one of his main sentiments is that the sheriffs, that office, his office, they swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and they are elected by the people. With this whole sheriff, all these sheriffs in different states sending letters and giving statements and joining what Sheriff Mack is doing, all of a sudden there's this commercial that came out, and it's a Navy commercial. Now, at face value, just on the surface, it is the Sailor's Creed. But it's interesting. I just think the timing, this has never been done before. I've never seen it before. It's only about a week or two old. But I just want to play the first 4 sentences, and so take a listen. And I want to get your reaction, Joshua and Brock.
I am a United States sailor.
I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
And I will obey the orders of those appointed over me.
I represent the fighting spirit of the Navy and those who have gone before.
All right. Did you guys catch that?
I did. The thing that struck me about it was, first part didn't sound so bad. I'll obey defend the Constitution. But the second part sounded terrible. I will obey the orders of those appointed over me. It wasn't qualified with so long as it doesn't violate the Constitution. That to me sounds rather, geez.
That's so true. I mean, I think I'm going to play devil's advocate. I think if someone heard that's maybe not worried about the government being tyrannical, they might be like, well, why would they give orders that are not aligned with the Constitution? And I think you just have to realize, well, they're always doing that.
That's standard operating procedure.
Right. I mean, that is a point. My family, I've had several people that have served in the Navy. I understand this is the Navy's creed. That's not necessarily my point, in playing this. I think our point, it's that the timing is odd, and that's the emphasis, is that they will support and obey the orders given to people appointed over them. So I just strike, thought as well.
I think you're right, and I think they probably know the economic collapse is somewhat near, and that they're going to be giving orders to the members of the military that they're not going to want to follow, and so they're probably trying to morally browbeat them into saying it is your duty and obligation to follow our orders. Period. End of discussion. And I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know, this is Joshua Byers. He's a regular contributor for Unleash Independence. You can go to his page, search him, look at his featured articles, anything like that. So, of course, he's going to go to economics. That's where his heart and mind lay. Is that correct?
That's fair.
Well, Josh, how can they find you on YouTube? It seems like you've been doing a lot of videos, and they're great content.
Yeah.
How can they find you on YouTube?
So if you go to YouTube and youtube.com/Pittsburgh Liberty, you can find my YouTube videos there. I've done one on the physical cliff. Kind of the first video was describing the problem, and then I did a follow-up video that described what a libertarian solution would be. And so, kind of like Sheriff Mack, I believe in solutions, and so it's not just appropriate to complain. You have to, come up with a way to solve it. So that's what I try to do. I don't want to just be a complainer.
Awesome.
Great. Yeah. We do have. Well, is there anything else? Because I want to play this clip and kind of exit the show if there's anything else to be talking about.
No, I think we've got some great information from Sheriff Mack, and thank you, Josh, for your points, and again, thank you, Kenny. He's gone, but thank you, Kenny, for coming on. He's been busy too at the gun show. So.
Absolutely. So we'll have all the links posted down below for the Sheriff's Mack. Unfortunately, did anyone catch the name of his organization? It was so bad on my mind, I just couldn't understand it.
Let me tell you, because I was Googling it while he was talking. So it is C as in cat, S as in Sam, P as in Paul, O as in opera, A as in apple, .org. So CSPOA.org.
All right. Okay. And then also we have Kenny Barlows. We'll put his information down below, the Utah Gun Exchange and North American Arms. Is that what he?
Yeah, North American Arms, yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, for anyone that has not heard this audio or this clip before, this is very popular going around YouTube. It's just a very inspired speech on gun control, or maybe what we shouldn't be doing. So we'll play that, and that'll be the exit of our show. So thank you so much for coming on, Joshua. Brock, thank you so much for working with Sheriff Mack to have this happen.
Thank you.
Henson Ange?
Yeah. My name is Henson Ong. Forgive me, English is not my first language. I am a legal immigrant, and I am an American by choice. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to express my opinion and give my testimony in opposition to the majority of the proposed bills which do nothing to deter future crimes. Gun control does not work. Your own history is replete with high school rifle teams, Boy Scout, marksmanship merit badges. You could buy rifles at the hardware stores. You could order them, mail order, delivered to your home. Your country was awash in readily available firearms and ammunition. And yet, in your past, you did not have mass school shootings. Other people have already expressed the question, what changed? It was not that the availability of guns suddenly exploded or increased. It actually was decreased. What was changed was societal decay. If gun control actually did work, Washington, D.C. and Chicago would be the safest cities in your nation, but it is not. They have the toughest gun laws and the highest crime and murder rates. Now, some people have asked and called the AR-15. They called the AR-15 a weapon of mass killing. Well, it turns out that there are a few government agencies which disagree with that characterization. The Department of Homeland Security has stated that a rifle chambered in .556 NATO with a 30-round magazine is suitable for personal defensive use. I have documentation on that. It is HSCEMS-1212-00011, solicitations for the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. Now, who needs an AR-15 with 30-round mags? That question has also been brought up. And I would like to put forward that had the Koreans in the LA riots not had AR-15s and AK-47s with 30-round magazines and Ruger 30s, their businesses would have been burned to the ground like all of the other businesses in their neighborhoods. Theirs stood because they stood their ground. I would also put forward the conjecture that had the 10,000 students at Tiananmen Square not been unarmed, things may not have resulted in so many of them disappearing. In your own laws, United States versus Miller, 309, U.S. 174, 1939, it was made clear that the type of firearms protected by the Second Amendment were those specifically useful and common for military use in defense of the state. I would like to note that the state is not the government. The state is the people. In Lewis,
excuse me, Mr. Arms, if you would.
In Lewis versus United States, 1980, it is stated that the Second Amendment guarantees no right to keep and bear a firearm that does not have some reasonable relationship to the preservation and efficiency of a well-regulated militia. It has nothing to do with hunting. The militia, as per the debate in the convention, shows plainly enough that it is composed of all males physically capable of acting in concert for common defense. And further, that ordinarily, when called for service, these men were expected to appear bearing arms supplied by themselves and of a kind in common use at the time. The AR-15 is the most common and popular rifle in America at this time.
Would you please wrap up?
I will wrap up. I would like to wrap up with a statement from Judge Andrew Koznitsky in Silveria vs. Lockyer, 2003. My excellent colleagues have forgotten these bitter lessons of history. The prospect of tyranny may not grab the headlines the way vivid stories of gun crime usually do, but few saw the Third Reich coming until it was too late. The Second Amendment is a doomsday provision, one designed only for those exceptionally rare circumstances when all other rights have failed. A free people can only afford to make this mistake once.
Thank you.
Independence is the foundation. This doesn't mean you are alone. With our online community, you are able to exchange information with people who share your same desire and respect for self-reliance. Thank you for being a part of Unleashing Independence, the place where complaints are curbed and solutions are obtained. You can control your life rather than have life control you.
UnleashIndependence.com